Grab some coffee, a Mountain Dew, maybe both. A storm is brewing. The Brainstorm. Welcome to The Brainstorm with Matt and Mike.
All right, welcome to The Brainstorm with Matt and Mike. Hey, today I am joined with Jared. He's going to co-host with me, and we got an exciting show for you today. Hey, you know, Jared, how we as a society learn, shop, communicate, do business is largely impacted by technology. And so there's no doubt that it's had significant implications on our day-to-day lives. And, you know, there are people out there that just have great ideas, but they don't know how to implement them.
Right.
They got a great idea that they know could help society. It could help some segment of business or learning, but they just don't know how to take that idea and make it actually come to fruition. And so I'm excited. We have a guest today that I think their business really helps people just like that. They're able to help them take great ideas and walk them through a process to implement it. And so why don't you introduce our guest today?
So today we have Caroline Crowder with the USC Technology Incubator. Thanks for joining us today, Caroline. Explain the incubator to us. What exactly do you do? What goes on?
Yeah, so just to start off, that's kind of a loaded question to start off with because we do so much. We fall under the University of South Carolina's Office of Innovation, Industry Partnerships, and Economic Engagement. We were previously the Office of just Economic Engagement. Now we've had a bit of a name change in recent months. So we're really this joint effort between the university and the city of Columbia. Some of our other key partners are Richland County and Lexington County. We've got a few other sponsors that really support our mission as well. But really we exist to help ideas get to the marketplace faster, to break down barriers that exist on their way, and to give them resources that companies need in order to be successful.
So solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, people that have great ideas, they're trying to get their business or get something off the ground. You guys provide some type of resource for them?
Absolutely, yes. So we have a list of community partners, which tends to be pretty much the most popular item that we have to offer at this point. Those are industry experts that are in the fields of things like marketing, HR, law, intellectual property, even cybersecurity experts who are willing to give back a small portion of their time because they have, you know, quote unquote, made it in their businesses. Mm-hmm. So now they're willing to give back a few pro bono hours every single month. So.
Awesome. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. You know, so that kind of tees up our next question that we had for you. So, you know, every business organization exists to solve some problem or set of problems. And so you kind of alluded to some of those problems that you might help someone solve. And we know as entrepreneurs, business owners, that a lot of times there's just a lot of dots that have to be connected. And, you know, unfortunately, a lot of businesses fail. Most of them fail. And usually it's because they just don't know how to navigate. They have a great idea. Maybe they're really good at one thing or another thing, but they don't know how to take and pull in all the resources they need to really grow a business and lead it successfully. Talk about what that problem is that your organization solves for your customers.
Yeah, so a lot of what we do too, and you really just hit the nail on the head too with something that I left out previously, which was the mentor element of what we do, the mentorship element and the coaching element. So for me personally, in my role, I do a lot of one-on-one coaching. I do that with leadership, with strategy, with marketing, business development. Those are kind of my core specialties. My executive director, Chad Hardaway, is a lawyer. He has his JD, so he's very skilled in intellectual property and also talking about strategy, talking about a lot of other topics, and investor management, crisis management, things like that. So we really take two different angles and when it comes to doing the one-on-one coaching. And so, you know, depending on what your needs are, either of us can kind of help you get there.
Awesome.
So I would imagine that providing all of these resources and just being able to be a resource for businesses, there's a lot of people that want to get involved. So what does that level of involvement look like for people that want to participate in the incubator program?
Yeah, so a new program actually that we've been working on for the past couple of years now that we're finally starting to see come to fruition is a mentor-backed program by MIT out of Massachusetts. So we're really, really excited to get this program up and off the ground, and you can probably look for a full launch of that within the next 12 months. But we are hitting the ground running, and the goal is to have at least a preliminary program outlined within the next 90 days or so. So we should see that, before the year end this year, that we'll have like a generic program of a very, very small cohort of what that's going to look like. But that's going to really formalize the mentorship element that we have at the incubator already. For right now, the mentor element has been done in large part by Chad and I's personal networks and our professional networks, along with our fantastic board of directors that we have, which is 17 board members, which is a pretty hefty board to carry. So between, so if you look at that overall, you've got about 20 individuals who can bring our professional networks to the table. But what we're realizing is that technology is so specialized and so focused that we need a larger network and we need a larger pool. So that's really the goal with the MIT Mentor Program, is to get that larger pool and to give those companies those specialized resources that they need.
Hey, going back, when was the incubator program launched and why?
So it was actually launched in December of 1998.
Okay.
So the incubator's been around for a hot minute, you could say. But, it's bounced around between the university, between the city of Columbia, and a couple different places. But the former Office of Economic Engagement at USC took it over, I think, around 2012.
Okay. So. And you've been there for?
Going on 5 years now.
Nice.
Yeah.
And how have you seen it evolve since you joined?
Immensely would be an understatement, quite honestly. I mean, I can remember my first days on the job with the incubator when we started to refine the application process. I call it phase 1 because I think I'm probably in about phase 12 of that right now, and actually currently redoing it because of the MIT program. So you got to constantly be evolving. But the big focus that we took was a harder stance on what we wanted to look for in our companies. We wanted drive and ambition from the entrepreneurs. We wanted them to be dedicated to their ideas. We wanted them focused, and we wanted to be able to really provide the resources. And we wanted, more than anything, I think a better line of communication between us as staff and between the board and between the entrepreneurs themselves, just a better line of communication on what their needs were and the ability to articulate what those needs are, because otherwise we can't provide what they need if they can't articulate it. So a large portion of my job early on was figuring out really and building out what that community partner list needed to look like, because when I first came on board, there weren't a whole lot of community partners that we had who were willing to give back. So a lot of what I did was relationship management and relationship development with people in the community who were willing to give back their time.
So how do you identify the perfect candidate to join the program, to set up at the incubator?
So we look for things twofold. Number one, our entrepreneurial qualities and those personal traits and the personal character and integrity of the entrepreneur who is applying. The second thing that we look for is the idea itself. We want to see something that's going to be highly scalable, that uses a high level of technology. If you come to me and say, well, I have a website, I will say, well, that's great, but this is 2020. Everyone has a website now. I want to see more. I want to see you utilizing artificial intelligence. I want to see you utilizing big data and using that to analyze big data. I want to see more out of you. And so what I look for more than anything are those people who have the drive and the ambition to do more, to better their communities, to change an industry, and who want to scale something on a large scale. But I also have to, reconsider that, because we are in South Carolina. We have a huge population of small businesses here. That's no secret. And not everyone in South Carolina defines success as being the next Facebook or the next Google. Right. And so we take that into account as well. And so I'm willing to meet people wherever they are in their journey. And if their goal is to get, $500,000 in sales annually, then okay, that'll be your goal, and I'll help you get there. But also, if you want to scale and become a global company, that's my job to help you get there too.
Yeah, those are the ones we're most drawn to, because that's a big, hairy, audacious goal, and it just seems so far out there. But those $500,000 companies, they produce jobs, they produce revenue, right here in South Carolina, and those should be welcome too, right?
Absolutely.
So it's all about innovation. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, absolutely. The idea is to be about innovation, but also, we also have to recognize that we're based in Columbia, South Carolina. Our job is to focus on the Midlands region, to create jobs here, to have high salaries here that are above average. That's our job at the core.
Right. So bringing industry to South Carolina, keeping it here in Columbia in the greater Columbia area is a lot of economic development. So talk about, I guess, how do you work with other partners with it, whether it's the county or the city? How do they fit into the incubator?
Yeah, so apart from just financial contributions, the best example that I can probably give of this is our largest success story in the history of the incubator, which was T-Cube Solutions and their acquirer, Capgemini, who's now moved on to the Bull Street District. So that was an instance where, obviously T-Cube was housed in the incubator. We provided them with certain resources that they needed in order to grow. They had great founders who were highly ambitious and highly driven, and they scaled T-Cube to have 125 employees just in the incubator here in Columbia alone. That did not include all of their international and other employees across the nation. So they were huge, to say the least.
Right. That
got a lot of attraction within the insurtech industry, which Columbia is known for, right? So it really hit our sweet spot from the city of Columbia's perspective as well. The university was involved, obviously, because of the incubator. And then where they ultimately decided to land at the Bull Street development involved Richland County as well.
Right.
So that's the perfect storm, I would say, and no pun intended, being on the brainstorm here. But that really is the perfect storm for us to all come together and all work together.
So we've kind of talked about, I guess, different levels or people at different, you meet people where they are, right? So if I wanted to become a part of the incubator, is it kind of one level of membership or involvement, or is there different levels at which you can access these resources? Talk about kind of the different programs that you have.
Yeah, so there is, right? And one of the things that I did early on too, Mike, to go back to one of your former questions, is we actually launched the Launchpad program that we have now that's centered around customer discovery. That quickly became our signature program because of, we ran so many successful cohorts with it. And even Curiosity Coffee Bar that's located on North Main Street, they participated in Launchpad. And you think, well, they're selling coffee, that's not technology. And we would have said the same thing if you had seen their idea that they started with on day one, it did have a much higher technology focus than what they ended up doing with Curiosity Coffee Bar. However, what they found throughout that program and through the interviews and through all the customer discovery exercises that I torture everyone with, it's that, they figured out that what North Main Street needed, and they had already identified the market that they wanted to be in. What they identified was that, and found out, was that it wasn't that original idea of what they wanted. It was what they ended up doing with Curiosity Coffee Bar. And the expansions that they've had since then to almost turn it into a full-fledged bistro is amazing.
So what I'm hearing is that sometimes we discover that the innovative idea, we don't need to innovate just for innovation's sake. We need to meet the demands, the needs of the consumer. And if the idea is to set up a coffee shop off North Main, and that's missing in North Main, that is innovative. It's innovative for that area. It doesn't mean that it's innovative globally. It's not a new concept to have a coffee bar necessarily, but it's new for that area of town. And so it brought something to those residents and those who work in that area that they didn't formerly have.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So kind of talk about what it looks like from day one. Someone, I don't know if they get approved, or is that right? You have to approve them. They apply, you approve them. What happens from there? What's the ideal scenario look like?
Yeah, so we do. So we've got a full-fledged application process that it can be quite lengthy depending on how you choose to view it and how far along you are in your entrepreneurial journey and which program that you're actually applying for. So we've already talked a little bit about the Launchpad program. We also have two other, I would say, quasi-signature programs, which is our affiliate membership, which is essentially a virtual membership with us, and then our resident membership, which also includes everything that the virtual membership does, plus a mailbox and office space on site with me as well. So we've got a couple different options for everybody, and yeah.
Then does everybody go through that? You said the customer mapping or like identifying their target market. Is that like the first step? Like I become a part of the incubator, and that's the first thing I do.
Yeah. So your step one is really going to be an initial conversation with me. And, we're going to talk a lot. We've got a preliminary set of screening questions that I'll ask you to complete. It's going to ask you things like, are you incorporated in South Carolina? If not, where are you incorporated? How many people are you planning to hire within the next 12 months? Where are these people planning to be located? Are you willing to hire virtual people? What does your intellectual property look like? What's your marketing strategy? And then from those questions, I can get a good read on you as an entrepreneur and also get a good read on what program is going to fit best with your needs.
How often do people have those answers to that question?
So that's a good question. It really is about 50-50.
Right.
So some people come to me and we just talk about the preliminary screening questions in a quick 30-minute call. And at the end of it, they say, Caroline, I'm not ready to do this.
Right.
This whole idea of entrepreneurship, this isn't for me. And my job really early on is really to convince you not to be an entrepreneur because it's hard work.
Right.
No doubt.
Yeah.
You know that as business owners. It's hard work. There's sleepless nights, there's a financial commitment. You carry an incredibly high stress load. Thinking about having to not only feed you and feed your family, but feed your employees and their families as well.
Right.
You carry all of that weight as an entrepreneur. And I think it's very easy for employees to look up to their bosses and say, oh, well, they make more money than I do. Well, guess what? They're carrying all the stress too. And if this ship sinks, it's on them.
Right.
Right. And so I agree. And what's interesting is as marketers, we ask a lot of these same questions when we're in discovery with our future clients. And so we're trying to understand who is your customer's audience? Who's your audience? Who are your customers? What's important to them? What needs are you really helping fill? What problem are you helping solve? How do you solve that problem? What's their life like before? And what's their life like after your solution, and really help paint that picture. What information do they need along that journey? So it sounds like you're diving into a lot of those questions right up front. And I imagine even those who aren't maybe yet quite prepared to move forward, for some, obviously they determine, hey, this isn't for me, and that's great because you're saving them a lot of heartache and financial loss and they can go find a job helping someone else build their ship. And that might be the role for them.
Right.
But for those who really want to pursue this, I think a lot of them, I would imagine, realize that maybe they're still 3, 6, 12 months out and they need to go dot some I's and cross some T's, and you're helping them prepare for that. So once they have those answers and they've clarified that, which it sounds like you're kind of guiding them through that process, then what happens?
Yeah, so I've had people who have called me back before, right? So they may take 30 days on their own, or they may even take 2 or 3 years. I've seen that happen too, where I've talked to some entrepreneurs on day one of my job, and then they call me back 4 years later. They say, hey, Caroline, I know that this idea wasn't good, or, the customers told me, the potential customer interviews that I did, they told me it wasn't good, so therefore it's not good. It's not that I told them it was a bad idea. And then so they'll come back with a second idea, and they'll go, okay, well, I want to put this idea through the program, okay, and let's run this idea through Launchpad. And I say, okay. Let's go. Let's run it. Let's see what the market says. But just like you guys do, it's all about listening to your customer, and it's all about listening to what the market is saying, and then adapting accordingly to that.
Yeah, the mistake we see so often is especially with newer business, is they try and create an innovation. They want to roll out a technology or solution because they have this idea, but they haven't gone to really understand who their audience is and what their needs really are. These people aren't looking to solve a problem. It's going to be really hard to convince them to buy your solution. And so that's, we have lots of folks who come in, especially those younger business folks, and that's where they're at. And they're struggling to gain that traction they're looking for. And it's because their product or service just doesn't meet a big enough need in the market today.
Right, and then if you take that one step further too, and we really think a little bit more about it, we'll see with entrepreneurs too that what they love to do is ask themselves if they themselves think that it's a good idea. Mm-hmm. And of course, we think all of our ideas are right, and we always think that we're right as individuals. Of course. We think that our opinions are the best on politics, religion, and everything else.
That's right.
And then they're probably going to go ask their significant other if they have one. Well, their significant other's if you're married to someone or you're in a long-term relationship, well, obviously you're going to support that person because you don't want to hurt their feelings, right? That's what most people do because people can't be truly honest. And then you take it another step further, and then you'll go ask mom and dad or whoever else is, or your best friends.
Yeah, all these people in your inner circle.
Yeah, well, obviously everyone's going to tell you it's a great idea.
Right.
But are they your target customer? No.
Right, exactly.
And you're not talking about who you need to be talking to.
Right.
Right, exactly. So when someone's a resident versus a virtual incubator member, talk about the difference between those two.
Yeah, so our affiliate membership or our virtual membership essentially grants you everything that we have to offer, including our community partners, our current mentor program with our board of directors, which will soon evolve into the MIT program within the next year. It gives you everything, basic needs, things like printing, copying, scanning. You have the option to add on a mailbox address to that membership as well. But the two big selling points to it are those community partners, because those people are willing to give back essentially free time to you, right? Because they believe in your idea, right? And they believe in the incubator concept. They want to support the city. They want to support the university. And they believe in, kind of changing their industries as well. So the two big aspects are the community partners and the mentor program.
Who are some of these community partners?
People like PAG Marketing in the Vista. We've got Bach Knight, Petrus, and Stormer has been a huge supporter of us for several years. They were one of our initial people to officially sign on. Nelson Mullins out of the Midlands, Mason Hogue is fantastic. Doug Limeberry with Burr Foreman out of Greenville. He does all of our intellectual property consulting for the most part. So we have a lot of hands in the pot. And we've really, like I said, we've really built that list up in the past few years.
So like Bot Night, Petrus, Stormer, they're volunteering time to help these businesses with their tax preparations and finances and things like that.
Yeah, so BPS is probably the best example that I can talk about. Pre-COVID, when we could actually meet in person, Tom Petrus would typically bring at minimum himself, if not one or two other people from the firm, and they would just come sit in a common space in our lobby and just chat and talk to entrepreneurs in passing. And they had a defined set of time every single month that they would come sit in the office. Now they're available virtually for calls and things like that. But they're always happy to talk about tax preparations, about if you screwed up your QuickBooks, right? That's probably close to, aside from tax questions, that's probably the number one thing that happens with the entrepreneurs, because when you're just starting out and you're wearing all the different hats, you're trying to be an accountant when you're really not an accountant.
Right.
And your QuickBooks will get screwed up pretty quickly.
I would imagine.
Yeah, as your business grows and you evolve, you're busy trying to wear so many hats. Or we say you could grow 12 or 14 arms, or you can go find some folks that you can delegate off to, get some help. And if you're really good at sales, or innovation, you're probably not great at accounting. We're not all great at everything, unfortunately. And so, if you want to run a smart business, you've got to find a way to delegate off those things that maybe you're not great at, that are time consuming, that drain your energy, and really protect that time so you can focus on the areas where you are strong.
Absolutely agree with that. And
so
that's part of the coaching that I do with them one-on-one.
Helping them identify those things. Do you use personality profiles or anything like that?
I'd use the good old-fashioned way of counseling.
Yep.
Because, if you get to a certain point where you are in tears in my office because you're so stressed out and you're having marriage issues and you're never seeing your kids and you don't know the last time that you picked your kids up from school, when it gets to that point, it's time to hire someone. It's time to make some sort of change.
Time to delegate a little bit.
And that is the life of a startup, early stage entrepreneur. And quite honestly, most businesses never grow out of that stage. That's why a lot of them fail, because they just run out of energy at some point and they take their ball and go home.
Yeah, and that's part of my job too, right? I'm more like an Energizer bunny. So if you come and sit in my office and your battery is completely drained, by the time that you leave, whether you have a good cry session or whether we're doing a strategy session on the whiteboard, whatever we're doing, my job and my goal at the end of every single conversation with an entrepreneur is to make you feel re-energized and rejuvenated and ready to go tackle on that next step in the process. Because the last thing that I want to have happen is that you quit and that you give up.
Right, hence the name Incubator Mom, right? I've heard people call you that a couple times.
The nickname has always been Incubator Mom.
Right.
Love it.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So, this year has introduced a ton of challenges for all of us, especially those in business, but really everyone. And I'm curious, how has the Incubator program, what have y'all done to pivot, to continue to remain relevant, to continue to meet the needs of your audience and help them continue to advance?
Yeah, so we did one thing very abruptly initially because, coming from a marketing background myself, I know how important marketing is to crisis management. So the very first thing that we did was we launched a Facebook Live series. And I said, the most powerful thing that we could do was create community and participate in storytelling at the moment. Mm-hmm. And that was probably back in March or so, or maybe the April timeframe was when we ran that. That was the most powerful thing that I felt like we could do at that time, but it was really just to give some entrepreneurs in the incubator who felt like they wanted to share their story. It was to give them the opportunity to share that story on a Facebook Live platform where we were blasting it all over our social channels, and was really meant to create that community and to hopefully connect with another entrepreneur who was maybe going through the same thing. So if their sales were completely shot, then we wanted, and they said that on Facebook Live, my goal was to have another entrepreneur watch that, or another person from the Midlands region reach out to them and say, hey, you are not alone. I am going through the same thing. Let's get together. Let's talk about it. Because at that time, that was probably the most significant thing that they could do. The second thing, the longer term strategy from what we've done, from my perspective, is we're working to pivot all of our programming to be virtual. So I'm working on virtual curriculum at the moment. That's probably the most significant project that I have on my desk at this point, is to get everything like the Launchpad program. It's to get that virtual, and it's to really refine what our incubator program is going to look like in a virtual way. And it's to hone in more so on that affiliate membership, because that's more relevant now than ever, because we don't see the end in sight for COVID. Some people have said, after the election this year, it'll calm down. After we get a vaccine, it will calm down. Well, the thing is, these things are due about every decade. If we look at history, we're going to have a pandemic about every decade. Yep. And the thing also is that we're a technology incubator. We should be facilitating virtual programming anyway. We're focused on technology. So it's given us an opportunity as well to open up our eyes and do some internal reflection and really kind of rethink what we want to be and what we want to do, and how we can even become more technology focused internally as well.
Yeah, it's easy to fall into the trap of this is how we've always done it. And oftentimes it takes a crisis for us to really step back, evaluate where we're at, and determine, hey, how do we continue to move forward and meet the needs of our audience and do it even better? So what I'm hearing is that you aren't trying to just get through this time. You're saying, hey, let's go ahead and embrace this. And now that our eyes are open and we've had to address this issue, how can we be better going forward and continuously as we advance?
Right, exactly that. Something very early on in the COVID pandemic, when it first hit, that I had a conversation with what felt like every single entrepreneur who was still on site at that point, was this idea of pivoting your mindset, right? Because if we viewed COVID early on as a problem and as this negative rainy cloud over us, there was never going to be an improvement. And I knew that I was going to lose a lot of companies and that we were going to lose a lot of talent overall as the community. And I didn't want that to happen. And I would like to believe that some of those conversations that we had early on about mindset shifts and about controlling, I like to call it the monkey mind, right? You've got to control your monkey mind, okay? You've got to keep a hold of that, because if you viewed COVID as an opportunity to pivot, I mean, you probably have a significant amount of profit sitting in the bank at this point.
Yeah, I can tell you that Splash Omnimedia, our core business, we were born out of a recession. And so I don't know if you know that story. That's probably a conversation for another day. But I mean, really, we pivoted from a completely different industry. We had the resources in place already, a graphic designer, a videographer, and and so a team of marketers, a web developer, to really kind of gave us the foundation for us to launch. But it just happened. And so we had to pivot. We had to make sure that we continued to provide for our families and keep our employees gainfully employed. And so we just grew it from there. And so, of course, today, close to 15 years later, we're 30 plus strong, and we're thriving. So we've been there, and it's interesting because the market's been pretty good for the past 10 years or so, and so seeing this, I recognize that there's huge opportunities for those who are willing to innovate, advance, and pivot, using that word, to really meet the needs of their customer today. And so for us, I know it was nothing for us to get in the car and drive 3 or 4 hours to go having a meeting with a client for 45 minutes. That's silly. There are times when that's necessary, but usually you could Zoom that and schedule time when you're going to be there for a day or two, and doing deeper dive stuff. And so that way you can maximize your time. It's more efficient. And now what we're finding is that people aren't nearly as apprehensive about getting on a virtual meeting as they maybe once were. And neither are we.
Yeah. And I will say too, I think, obviously I would say most, even technology startups, they've all taken a hit. Most companies in general at this point, they've taken a pretty hard hit from the pandemic. But I will say the one company that I have seen absolutely thrive during this pandemic has been a marketing-focused company. And I think that's a true testimony to what people like Splash do, what people like PAG Marketing do, what people like the Pearson Collective, who's under the incubator, what people like that do. Because when you are telling stories, marketing is something that when a pandemic hits, you invest in your marketing budget. You don't detract from it. And that's what I think that's the mistake that a lot of CEOs tend to make straight out of the gate when we have to make budget cuts, is the marketing budget is typically the first to go. Right. And that's the wrong way to look at it. The marketing budget is supposed to be the last to go.
We completely agree.
Yeah, preach. Keep preaching.
I will keep preaching on that one.
No, we agree, and you're exactly right. We see that. Thankfully, most of our clients aren't of that mindset because we vetted them up front. And so because we're going to invest a ton of time with a client, and the last thing we want is them to panic and in panic mode make decisions that just are not really going to serve their long-term vision. And so what we find is that they may save some short-term cash flow by reducing, whether it's marketing or HR or whatever it is that they're going to eliminate, but it's coming at the cost of achieving what they really are aiming to achieve. And those organizations, more often than not, they either shrink considerably, much more than they thought they would over time, or they go out of business. And so we find is those who have the right vision and they're willing to continue to invest, they find other ways for them to get through that slowdown. I mean, they got to identify, do I really have enough margin in my products and services? Is there another add-on service that we can provide that will add more value to the customers we're already serving and make each customer more valuable and drive more profits to the bottom line so we can sustain the short term? But what they ultimately do, those who continue to market, ultimately they end up just capturing more market share. And when things rebound, that's when their business explodes. Exactly.
And the conversation, the title of the conversation that I keep on file in my head, to have that same conversation with my entrepreneurs, it is called Stick to the Plan. Mm-hmm. That's what it's called, because you remember that long-term vision, you remember what those goals are, and you remember what your plan is, and your plan's always going to be adjusting, right? But you remember how to execute. And you remember how to pivot along the way, but you don't forget about executing to reach those goals.
Right, maintain that long-term vision.
Exactly.
Yeah, so tell us some advice that you would have for those who are early, maybe entrepreneurs, or maybe they've started a company, they've got a handful of employees, they've got a great idea, they've either gotten it off the ground, but they don't know how to scale it, or maybe they're just trying to get it off the ground. Maybe speak to some of those folks.
Sure, so I think it depends, right? So it depends on what stage that you're in. If you're in that early idea stage, I would say do some customer discovery early on. Don't wait until you've hired a couple of employees. Don't wait until you've gone out to fundraise money, because chances are if you try to go fundraise money, they're going to say, okay, well, what customer discovery initiatives have you undertaken? And if you say, oh, I asked my mom, my dad, my best friend, and my significant other, they're going to look at you like you have 4 eyeballs, maybe even 8 eyeballs if you're lucky. So, if you're in that early stage, go do some customer discovery work. Let's say that you've already done that and you're maybe looking to scale. Come talk to someone like me. It doesn't even have to be me, though. If your idea maybe isn't technology focused, do your research on who is involved in the entrepreneurial community in Colombia, right? We've got some really amazing economic development offices who are always willing to have conversations with people. We've got the Office of Business Opportunities. If you're a minority or a woman, there are so many resources out there for you. There's specific certifications from the SBA that you can undertake that gets you access to federal and state contracts that are set aside just for you. Just like we've seen a lot of success with incubator companies utilizing a hub zone certification, which is a historically underutilized business zone. So if you can figure out where your niche is going to be, that can also help you scale. So maybe you're able to take it as an individual, you're able to take it from that idea to maybe like basic establishment where you can pay maybe 1 to 2 other people on staff, and you can afford to feed your family and feed the families of a couple of other people. But when you're ready to scale it, just go talk to somebody, right? Because we all kind of
besides your mom and dad. And
yes, don't talk to your mom, your dad, your significant other, or your best friend. Go talk to people who are involved in the industry, right? And people who have done what you've done before. Look for a mentor. Go talk to a mentor who is in a similar industry or who has had the entrepreneurial journey that you desire, right? So if you want to scale, don't talk to the business owner that's still making, only $5,000 a year.
Talk to someone who has the experience, right?
Yeah, talk to somebody who's already scaled a business, who's done it once, twice, 3 times over.
Yeah.
Right? Because they have the experience. They've already gone through the pitfalls. They've hit the speed bumps. They've gotten the flat tires on their journey, and they can help you avoid many of those. And so we can be a resource for them. Certainly the incubator can be a resource for them. I'd like to hear, if it's okay, just a couple of success stories beyond T-Cube at the incubator, like maybe two of your existing members that are maybe just in position to really explode.
Oh, I like this. I like this question a lot, right? Because then going back to like the incubator mom title, this has previously gotten me in trouble with having favorite children, right?
Yeah.
But I blame the entrepreneurs for it and I blame their mindset for it because, like I said, some of them have that idea that they want to scale and they want to go global, and I'm all for it because I'm a big, hairy, audacious, goal-oriented person as well. So if you want to scale something and get me excited and all riled up about it, come talk to me in my office because I can't wait to hear.
Right.
So, a good example of that, someone who wants to really blow up and scale internationally, Van Robotics. You just had Laura Boconfuso on here a few weeks ago. She is a great example of someone who is highly ambitious and tenacious and just ready to tackle the world and will not take no for an answer. I mean, I would put her like as our starting quarterback of the Gamecock football team this year because maybe as our defensive end. I mean, I really think she could probably be on the caliber of Jadeveon Clowney.
Hey, we definitely need the help.
I think we do need the help. I hope Will Muschamp isn't listening to that right now.
That's interesting about Van Robotics, and as you said, we had Laura on a while back, and man, she's awesome. She's a rock star. Tell us about some of the other rock stars that have gone through the incubator program or that are in the incubator program right now.
Yeah, so a couple of other ones that I do love to talk about and love to touch on. Land Intelligence, owner is Gore Bolton. He is a veteran entrepreneur, and just like I said about Laura and the scalability that she is just driven to have, Gore has the exact same mindset. Just that absolute relentless pursuit to change an industry. He is absolutely capitalizing on that with Land Intelligence. So he, I think, has got about probably 7 or so trademarks for algorithms and things to but basically he's doing like GIS mapping, and he's pivoted his company during COVID to do more of the GIS mapping. But really what the original intent was to be able to connect with land developers and investors who are interested in looking at certain pieces of land, but where they, instead of doing all the reports and all the generation on their own, they could just go with Land Intelligence, press a button, and then Land Intelligence can automatically generate those reports immediately, and they just pay a monetary fee for it. But the investors' time, who is worth, obviously a lot per hour, isn't worth doing that land research. Land Intelligence fixes that problem.
Yeah, it's awesome. So he identified a problem and it came in. I actually had a meeting with Gore some time ago, and he was able to share a lot of the data points that they've been able to connect, and it's really interesting and time saving. So that's the difference between someone vetting 8 or 10 properties and making a decision versus investing that time and those resources to just vet one property. So it's a significant change for the better for the audience that he's serving. Do you have another one that you would like to share?
Sure. I mean, good Lord. I mean, I could keep rolling down my list, and I won't torture, you guys or take up the whole podcast segment with this. But I mean, we've got close to 45 client companies. That's a hefty portfolio. But some of the other ones I would say that you can definitely watch out for, and a couple that we featured last year in our member showcase, Healthy Hands Cooking, which is a Lexington-based company. They're a great one to be watching for. We actually graduated them recently. But and I will say with this about Healthy Hands Cooking, once you are going back to like this whole family, since Jared's, pointed out that I'm incubator mom at this point, we really do have that family atmosphere at the incubator, and it really is that South Carolina feel, even though we have so many small businesses that we're helping and so many startups that we're helping. It really is that family orientation that we have, that once you're in there, you're in for life just about. And the MIT Mentor Program is also going to help us with those longer term connections. But Healthy Hands is someone that graduated but then came back to us and said, hey, I really need your help with this software agreement that we have. And we said, okay, come on in. And that's something like Chad would handle.
Right.
He would put his lawyer hat on.
So I remember when they were early stage, and they were really trying to figure out their model. And my understanding is they've continued to evolve and continue to refine really how they were going to meet the needs of their audience. But their founder, Jan, is just so passionate. And so I knew that she would find success one way or the other. And I'm so happy to see that she's continued to advance Healthy Hands and try and ultimately teach our youth how to eat more healthy. I mean, at the end of the day, and how to actually be responsible and create a meal for themselves, and not have to depend on mom or dad to do it for them when they're 25 years old.
Yeah, Jan's famous story that she will say in her pitch, and what captured my attention immediately, which every entrepreneur needs their hook. And if you don't know what your hook is, you guys know this is marketing, guys. You've got to have your hook to get your attention. Jan tells the story of when her kids' friends would come over to her house after school, and she would be teaching them how to cook. And one of the kids legitimately thought that potatoes came out of a box. Woo is right. Yeah. That's the short version of the story. Yep. So Jan knew at that moment, and you described her as being passionate. I would say the exact same word about her. She is so passionate about changing the obesity pandemic that we're facing in America and that we have been facing for years. That is her true passion, and Healthy Hands Cooking is her way of doing it.
That's awesome.
So I've heard a couple of things: control your monkey mind, do your research, don't cut your marketing budget. For anyone else who's listening,
don't do that.
If anybody wants to get in touch with you or access some more information about the incubator, or just get in contact to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do so? Yeah,
best, easiest way is to go check out our website. It's usccolainc.org. If you go to our website, there's a Contact Us tab dead center of the monitor screen. If you click on Contact Us, there's an interest form. If you just scroll down, fill out the interest form, it goes straight to my email, and just tell me whatever you want to talk about.
Awesome.
And if they want to connect with you professionally, LinkedIn is a good place?
Yeah, if you want to connect with me personally or professionally, LinkedIn's a great place to do it. Again, my name's Caroline Crowder, if they missed that at the beginning, and that's my LinkedIn name as well.
Caroline, we really appreciate you coming in today. It's been awesome, and we just wish everyone over there at the incubator tons of success. We're here to help any of those young businesses or mature businesses take it to the next level. If we could be a good fit for them, we'd love to entertain that.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Jared, for having me. This has been fun.
Have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching The Brainstorm with Matt and Mike.
If you like what you saw today, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll see you